Hello everyone, welcome back. Another episode of Market Bites for you all. Like, share, subscribe, why don't you? Hope you are all doing well. Liberation Day, they're calling this. April the 2nd. Who knows what's going to happen? We'll, I guess, discuss it next week. But looking forward to that. Joined by Josh Gilbert and Nezha Molt. Josh, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah. I mean, Liberation Day is going to be interesting. No one knows what's going to happen, to be honest, do they? So,
No, I feel like that. I said this in the Daily Voice. It's like, I can't actually tell you what I think is going to happen because I don't know.
yeah.
And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of twists and turns. Nezha, how are you?
I'm doing well, but I think that we can just can expect the unexpected. I think that everything is possible, and we are just in front of this turbulence that's going to happen today. So it's definitely an interesting day ahead.
Yeah, predictably unpredictable.
Yeah.
Luckily, we've got a few topics that we know what we're talking about here. We're going to talk about the RBA. We're going to talk about TikTok, and we're going to do a quick wrap up of quarter one as we head into quarter two. Josh, RBA, let's get started then. Left their rates on hold yesterday. Not really a surprise, I would say, but any surprises from the decision, the press conference, any comments?
Yeah, as you said, Sam, not really much of a surprise coming from the hold itself. But we did get a slightly more hawkish tone from the board than I think what we were expecting. We've said it already, Liberation Day, it's upon us. On that as well, I mean, I much prefer when the market goes up than when the market goes down. I really do.
Yeah.
We've had 2 really great years, but it's so much more fun when the market goes up. Don't know whose idea it was to invent bear markets, but I don't like them anyway. But look, ultimately, we've got uncertainty rising, and I think the RBA basically acknowledged that in its statement, after sort of the decision. And interestingly, what I found, probably one of the biggest takeaways, that there was actually no mention of the local federal budget. So they handed down a federal budget in Australia in recent weeks. And I think what it showed was that they're more concerned about sort of global, tariffs. So, sort of what's going to be happening from a Trump perspective than what's, going on locally right now. And that was really interesting to me, sort of to see that, because ultimately a lot of sort of economists were sort of saying that the budget was stimulatory and that it would have an effect from an economics perspective, and there was just sort of no mention of it really. So I thought that was, it just sort of showed, given that Australia doesn't have a huge part to play from a tariff perspective. Exports, it only counts for about 4.6% the US. It's more of sort of that Asia scope, China, in terms of that effect. But from a global perspective, that sentiment and everything else, that contributes to it. So, back to sort of more of their statements, they also said that the decline in underlying inflation is welcome, but there were risks on both sides, and the board were very cautious about the outlook. So many expected a bit of a dovish statement coming through, and it was a far more hawkish tone than I think we were expecting. And this comes at a time when markets were essentially pricing in a cut for May. They were basically fully pricing in a cut by May. That's sort of been dialed back slightly. That May decision for the RBA is going to be a big one, though. By that time, we would have probably, had this sort of fallout from tariffs. Maybe we'd understand a little bit more. I don't think this, one day of liberation or whatever we're calling it is going to give us everything that we need to know. We would have also had an election locally in Australia that would have concluded, and we also would have received more quarterly inflation data, which is sort of more important data for the RBA. So they would have compiled a lot more together. We would have probably get a better lay of the land in terms of tariffs. But I think that quarterly inflation data is going to be really, really important if it continues to sort of match the easing that we've seen from the monthly inflation figures. We've continued to see a really, really good easing of inflation here locally. Then a cut does look pretty likely. But the RBA certainly didn't give that away in their statement. So I think that, Liberation Day is going to be very, very important for the RBA, and I think for every central bank across the globe, basically, every central bank is going to have their eyes all dialed in. And I think this is the worst thing about all of this is, right? It just depends on what side of the bed Trump decides to get out of, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But I think that the market hates the most, what market hates the most is uncertainty. So even if we get bad news today, it's still better than uncertainty. And just to give us indication on where we are going, how is he thinking, what's going to happen next, I think this is gonna give some relief to the market, no matter what he's gonna say.
Yeah, bring it on. Bring it on, Trump. Just wake up on the right side of that bed, please. Another deadline that people have been looking forward to for more information, more clarity is April the 5th. And we're talking about TikTok here. Do you think, Nezha, a last minute deal could be done? Are we looking at a ban? If there is a sale, who's the likely buyer? And when you look at related stocks, are they going to be winners? Are they going to be losers? How do you see it?
Yeah, we are back to these decisions, what's going to happen with TikTok, because on one hand, it's kind of hard to imagine TikTok without 170 million American users and the app suddenly going dark for them. This has happened before for a day, but it didn't last. But actually, legally, if ByteDance doesn't sell US operation, the ban is supposed to kick in. And if the deal happens, honestly, I think that risks are higher for that than they were in January, because Trump has hinted repeatedly that he wants to make this deal happen. And he even floated the idea of lowering tariffs on China just to smooth out this process. And this signals that he's far more interested in winning than focusing or enforcing this shutdown that everyone is so afraid for. But from investors' perspective, this uncertainty really creates both risks and opportunities as always, because if TikTok is banned, the biggest winners are predicted to be Meta and Google. They have Reels and YouTube Shorts and maybe even Snapchat, at least among Gen Z, which still uses it, because I haven't opened Snapchat for years now. But on a flip side, maybe some of the one company that could be a loser in this situation is Oracle, because they are TikTok's main US cloud provider. And although this is not a huge deal for them, it's still a symbolic hit, and this could hit them at least on a short term. But who's gonna step in if deal comes through? There's been rumors also about Oracle again to leading this buyout, and also names like Mr. Beast. But it's not gonna be a smooth sale, because it needs to pass US regulators and get approval from China, which is a massive hurdle. But if it happens, we could see some big changes. Under US ownership, we could get content moderation and get stricter rules on the app. Algorithm could change. So we might not be seeing the same app as we are used to.
It's got to be someone with, if their agent's going to be bought, it's got to be someone with some deep cash anyway, some deep pockets.
Yeah.
Because this isn't going to be a cheap deal, that's for sure, right? Like even just the US arm of its business it's got to be like most companies, it's the most valuable part of that business. And depending on obviously what they're doing in revenue in the US, you're talking arguably for that part of the business, you're talking probably a $50 billion at least for sort of TikTok. And you think what X went for? What did Elon pay for X? 40 billion, something like that. So I think you've got to be, saying it's got to be close to maybe around that, if not around like the 50 billion. So it's either got to be a big tech giant, someone who in this market and this uncertainty is willing to stump up the cash, or maybe a consortium or something like that can sort of take it private. But can he extend? Can Trump extend this again? Or is the 5th? He probably will, let's be honest. He can probably do what he wants. So
everything is possible, isn't it?
Everything is possible with Trump. I mean, he's trying to, won't be surprising if he changes some rule somehow that means he can run again for president, right?
He'll buy it.
Yeah, you buy it. Yeah, I'm just going to rule myself out of buying TikTok. I know there's a few rumors floating about, but I'm out.
Market bites can say we're not going to invest.
Yeah, we're not going to do it. It's quite interesting. You mentioned Snapchat. Actually, I was at Arsenal Fulham yesterday. We were leading 2-0. We conceded late, 93rd minute, 3 minutes left of injury time, and they had a corner with a minute to go. And I was with my friend Chris. Chris, if you're watching this, I thought this was really embarrassing of you. But he got out his phone because he's a Man United fan, but I invited him to the game. Silly decision in hindsight. But he had Snapchat ready and he was filming, hoping that Fulham were going to score so he could film my reaction. Luckily, they didn't score. And then he just looked like an idiot for having Snapchat at 34 years old or 33 years old. But some people still do use it. But I'm with you, Nezra. I haven't opened that app or used that app in, I don't know, 10, 15 years maybe. But they have a lot of users. So maybe, we're in the minority there. But I would, if I was in the US, I would miss TikTok. There's plenty of time. Sometimes I'm sitting there, and next thing you know, an hour, 2 hours is gone, and I've just been watching golf videos on repeat. So yeah, it happened for a day, and I remember seeing some of the posts where people were like doing emotional goodbyes to their American audience, and I thought, get me off this planet. But here we are, closer to some sort of deal potentially happening. There'll be a lot of fingers crossed, but we're gonna have to wait and see.
Yeah, I also saw that there are much less posts scheduled for after this deadline passes. And I'm still surprised that so many people are using Snapchat, and I'm surprised that it's so popular among younger generation. I never thought this app is gonna stick, to be honest. But if we talk about our last topic today, and this is about last 3 months being done, Sam, what has stood out to you so far? Are you surprised about how things are turning up or not, or how do you
It,
feel about it?
Yeah, it's been, I think it has been surprising in many aspects, to be honest. I think if you sat down a load of people on January the 1st, I don't think they would have said exactly what's happened. And if they did, they would have to be a time traveler. But they've flown by as usual. In the next 3 months, we're going to say the same thing. I say it's flown by, but at the same time, it does feel like we've had like 10 years worth of headlines and data from January, February, and March. A lot of information has come, so much has happened. So let's just do a quick wrap, and then obviously you guys can let me know what was your main highlight, if you like, or what shocked you the most, or what I guess just stood out to you. We obviously got the tariffs that seem to change day by day. Trump saying this, going back on that, increasing this, Friday night, Sunday morning, Monday morning. You didn't want to wake up on a Monday too late for the markets because some new tariff headline had dropped. I think that was pretty important, stood out to me a lot. Also, the fact that the stock market's down since the inauguration, compare that to 2016, there's a stark contrast. Really, really is, where in 2016 the market was up, quite a few percent, and now we're down quite a few percent as well since that. So that's a bit of a surprise. I don't necessarily think people really saw that coming, certainly not the majority anyway. China finally having a great start to the year, their best year starts the year in many, many years, and Europe doing very well too. I think maybe people, and we would put ourselves in this group, us three here, we thought at some point China is going to do well. It's just when, not a case of if, but it's so far so good. And obviously Europe defense stocks have done very well there as well. That stood out to me. American defense stocks less so. European defense stocks just to be the winner. Obviously Meta had that 20-day winning streak. And then reversed all of those gains, and recently has now gone negative year to date. When, if you think a stock is going to have in the first quarter 20 days positive, and then it's going to finish the quarter negative, you'd think, what on earth is happening to these tech stocks? And Magnificent Seven, I think that was something worth noting. Gold, new all-time high after new all-time high after new all-time high, reaching 3,000, extending above 3,100 it's trading at now. Crypto struggles as well, I think was a little bit surprising, a little bit of shock, worth mentioning. Bitcoin has actually held up relatively well, it has to be said, but Ethereum below 2,000 regularly. I don't think many people saw that coming. You go back 3 years ago, it's where we're trading now. So yeah, that didn't necessarily go to plan. And I think, again, we talked about this earlier, I don't think many people thought, with Trump coming in ahead of inauguration day and the crypto strategic reserve, thought that crypto would struggle, but it has. Also, we talk about inflation creeping back, Fed rate decisions to keep things on hold, how many rate cuts, that changes week to week, data release by data release. We've got non-farm payrolls coming out on Friday. How's that going to influence things as well? That would be worth obviously keeping an eye on. The massive underperformance of Magnificent Seven, that's just gone into a bear market a couple of days ago. I think people maybe thought we were going to see some rotation out of Magnificent Seven, but to put it down into a bear market this year, I'm not sure many people had that on their bingo card. And of course, the DeepSeek stuff, that was an interesting Monday. Of course, when that happened in the market, fell out of bed, Nvidia dropped 20% before recovering a bit, before dropping more. That was obviously something that really stood out to me. And to be honest, I probably forgot some of the stuff as well. But from that list or something else, Josh, what's your number one thing for you that if you were to summarize, this was the thing that really stood out to me from the first 3 months of the year?
How's it been 3 months as well that you just mentioned? It feels like a year we've just gone through there. When we used to do our yearly wraps. I tell you what sums it all up. Tell you what, I'm going to put it all in. I'm going to sum it all up. Is that we had a news IPO and the stock went up like 700% in the last 2 days. Newsmax or something. That sums everything up.
Now.
That sums up the first 3 months of this market, just completely irrational. The S&P 500 is dropping 2%, reversing it, finishing up 1%.
Yeah.
We're back. We are just so back. Actually, I want to go back. I want to go back to last year where we just kept going like that. We kept going up every day. It was nice. 1% here, maybe 1% down, 2% up. Now we've got everything. Trump's back, baby, and just volatility is so here. We're just... Thanks for that. Keeping us really on our toes every single week. Yeah.
I bet that we all gonna look 10 years older after this year passes, because it's so stressful, isn't it? We can just expect the unexpected because everything is happening at once. We saw Magnificent Seven beating the market for a few years now. And what happens after Trump inauguration? Everything drops. We see gold hitting all-time highs, silver following it. It is just a crazy world, and no one knows what's going to happen next. It's also possible that in next 3 months, we're going to see Tesla back on all-time high. It can happen.
We also have just completely forgot that the President of the United States launched his own meme coin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is the one, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the fact that can somehow, miss out on this list just shows how crazy the first 3 months were.
It's been,
That was wild. And then 24 hours later, Melania does the same thing. Crazy 48 hours in the market. January really was like a year, actually. Now,
can you imagine listening to this episode 3 months ago? I wouldn't believe ourselves.
But also, I mean, other than saying gold is doing well and, Magnificent Seven is going to struggle, you probably struggle to make money based off these headlines. How do I do it? When do I do it? Because it hasn't literally been just one direction, for markets. Some of them have, as Josh, you said, S&P down 2%, then up again. And volatility is back. Long live volatility. Keeps us on our toes. Josh and Neja, that brings us to the back end of the podcast. It's always a pleasure, never a chore. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See ya.